Mr. Squidward.
Mr. Krabs.
Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs. You want me to start off?
Fuck it.
Oh.
Can't replace me. Okay.
Can't play some solid, bro. I mean, put my hat back on.
Dead ass. I'm actually somebody swear, but the corner. Alright. Mr. Krabs. You know who else is on ketamine, bro?
Me?
I said, you know who else is on ketamine, bro?
Who else on ketamine, bro?
Elon Musk.
Is he actually?
Yes, sir.
Why you on ketamine, bro?
He said it's for his depression. It's like a depression.
That makes sense, because he looks mad depressed over there.
Yeah. You know what ketamine is actually? That's like a horse tranquilizer.
Really?
Yeah. Like heroin for a horse. Alright.
Fire.
Lock in. Oh, what the hell? This is a completely different kind of game. Fucking ketamine bottle in the bottom.
Duh.
Hold on.
You looking rough.
I gotta move the camera. Oh, what the fuck? Oh, okay. I guess that closes the whole game. Let me move the camera because there's a ketamine bar at the bottom.
Shit, I didn't see that. Oh, fuck. Dawg, that's lit. Yo, look at my boy. What is he going through? Miss Puff break his heart again or some shit? Dawg, got the beard growing. The fit kind of crazy. Got blood on there.
Is that blood or is that dookie, bro?
I think he probably might have shot his pants, bro.
Shot his pants for the front, bro? Oh, man. Oh, what? I didn't know this game. This GTA, bro. There's some ketamine right there.
Holy, wait, where is he living, though? Motel?
Motel, bro.
Yo, this is a... Damn. I don't mean to shit on the other game, but this shit kind of... Shit hard, bro.
Can you hop in the whip? Hop in the whip, please. Oh.
Wait, huh? One sec. You get punch?
Yeah. What's right click do? Right click? E? No? Oh!
Okay. We talking now.
Wait, what just happened, bro? Yeah, this is definitely copyrighted music, bro. What did you do? E or right click?
I just right clicked. No, I jumped into it. What the fuck is this game?
This ain't Tony Hawk Pro Skater, bro. What the hell?
Okay, let me go get my ketamine.
Yeah.
Dawg, this game kind of nuts.
Let me go get my ketamine, bro.
I fuck with this.
Alright. Oh, is that? Alright, so you got one ketamine. Can't punch these doors open.
Is there like if I press tab?
E would be the one. But I guess not.
Nah, it's not.
Alright, go to the chum bucket, bro.
Dawg, they have a whole fucking city here.
Is it like something to make the H lowercase in chum bucket, bro?
Odds that's how it actually is.
Nah, there's no way it's actually how it is, bro.
Yo, this game's sick, bro. Ray gun, lost dog. Dog? They ain't got no dogs. Free guitar lessons. Yo, community reference.
Guitar.
Yo, whoever made this game, you know ball, bro. Camera angle a little weird, but you know you got it. Hyper Disco Rodeo.
We're looking at his booty.
What's wrong with Krabs' booty, bro?
Alright, go to chum bucket, bro.
Ah, bro. This game's fucked. Bro, he be boxing, bro. He gotta. Holy. Hold on, let me see what these people sound first.
Yo, beat their asses, bro. Beat their asses.
Can I?
I hope so.
Dog, Mr. Krabs a terrorist. Oh.
Just leaving bodies behind.
Yo, I'm about to go crazy, bro. Yo, come here. Holy fuck,
Go
bro.
find some more ketamine. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Wait, is he... What the fuck? I got health bar?
Oh, wait, he's fighting back. Oh, shit. I didn't know they could do that, bro.
Is he One Punch Man? How's he knocking them out? Bro, I'm terrorizing the city.
You see that claw, bro?
Yo, yeah. Big meaty claws, dog.
Oh, okay, the Chumbucket guy's fighting back, bro.
Fucking pussy. Fight me, bro. You still good? Yeah, that's what I thought, bro. I run this place, bro.
It's kind of getting low, though.
How do I take the ketamine, bro?
How do you take the ketamine?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
K? Nah.
Maybe press 1. There you go. Oh! Can you go to Chumbucket? Go to Chumbucket, bro. Go to Chumbucket right now, bro. To the right, to the right, to the right. Yeah, we gotta find some more ketamine, bro. Oh, there's a bunch of people to fight here.
Dog.
And they got some more ketamine right in front, bro.
I take these guys out in a jiffy, dog.
In a jiffy, bro.
Come here, come here, come here. Let's squabble up, bro.
Show you some karate. Oh. 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 Oh.
Oh, I got his ass. Come on, come on, come on.
No damage taken. This guy's going crazy right now.
Oh.
Drive by. Oh. Big meaty claws.
Oh, yeah. Get the fuck out of here, boy.
Can you go inside this bitch? No.
I can't. Okay. Dog, Munir. This game is sick, bro.
Let's find some more ketamine, bro. This SpongeBob house still left?
Yo, what's...
Oh, the crusty cut.
Oh, yeah, let's pull up. Wait, why is it all... I guess Plankton moved it.
I think you got some... Yeah, you got some money, bro.
Come here.
Look at these bodies just chill.
This is like fucking she-mail, bro.
Yeah.
Yo, I killed everybody. Yo, Munir, can I slaughter everybody in town first?
Yeah, I don't know what's stopping you.
My...
Oh, it's ketamine right there.
What's up, ketamine?
Oh, it's like ketamine.
You're not finna do shit, boy.
Bro, moving like Ezra Miller, bro. Fucking Hawaii.
Oh my god, bro.
Bang. Oh, this guy's tough?
Nah. Ain't nobody tough, bro.
Yeah.
Moving like prime Mike Tyson out here, bro, on the ketamine, bro. Bro, this is sick.
Oh. Ketamine hole.
What is this?
The pipe, bro.
Can I pick it up?
Have you tried right-clicking more things, bro? Or fucking whatever?
Nah, it doesn't let me.
They gave this motherfucker a whole climbing animation and everything, bro.
This game is sick when I'm not SpongeBob. I'm just Mr. Krabs, bro. This guy just... Oh! Come on, boy. Oh! Come on.
More ketamine, more ketamine.
Oh, I'm racking up on this ketamine, dog.
More cat. Let's go. Oh.
What the fuck over here, boy?
Oh.
What the fuck?
Jab.
That jab is lethal, bro. My god. Alright, let's see what SpongeBob's saying.
Let's see if we can box this motherfucking SpongeBob.
Oh, who's the other guy's name? Vance Lintz?
Who?
You know the guy who tried building SpongeBob? Flans. Let's see Flans. Oh, he fucked up too.
You got a quest, bro? What is that? What is that icon?
Please, Mr. Krabs, I need you to get my ketamine. It's in town over there. Please, Mr. Krabs, I'm fiending.
Just give him the ketamine, bro. Oh, you already got 5 out of 5 ketamine, bro. Click on him.
Holy fuck, thank you so much, Mr. Krabs. Oh, you're a lifesaver.
What's he gonna do? What is he gonna do for it?
Get more good stuff. Go see Patrick.
That's what happened after Nosferatu touched him, bro.
Dog, okay. I have a theory. You think the Bikini Bottom government intentionally planted ketamine
You're saying
to control?
I think it was plankton, actually. I don't think it was.
Yeah, cause man, yo, we're not powerful enough to stop him.
Is he behind this rock, bro?
He is, bro.
Oh no, he's not, bro. He's behind a different rock, bro.
Yo, what's that over there?
That's fucking.
Dog, this game
There's more obs, bro.
I fucking love this game, dog. This might be my
hidden ketamine. We're like in the floor.
I know. Advantage.
You got the low ground, bro. They can't hit you, bro. Their swings are too high, bro. Oh, got his ass. Get that ketamine.
I'm trying, bro.
Oh, yeah.
I got it. I look, might need to take this, bro.
That's okay, bro. You gotta find Patrick, bro. I think he's behind that thing on the left right there. That purple crystal thing. He's behind this thing, bro. This is definitely where they sourcing the ketamine from, bro.
Dog, this game is so sick, bro. Oh my god, bro.
Oh, what's in that hole, bro? That's a beef hole, bro.
Nah.
Better drop down like Batman, bro.
That's literally what I'm attempting, bro.
Take down.
Arm you boys. Your fellers ain't big enough for the two of us.
Alright. I don't think so, all that, bro.
Alright, man. I'm finna touch down this bitch, bro. Oh, fuck. Chill.
Oh. Okay, you got extra cat if you need it, bro. Oh, you might need it, bro. Oh,
fuck.
Alright, get your ass out of here, bro. Before you get clapped up.
Oh, fuck.
You're too fast.
No.
Alright, you gotta do some parkour, bro. You got this.
No.
Oh, you don't got that, bro.
Mr. Krabs' fat ass, bro.
They don't know.
They don't know. Wait, do I take fall damage?
I hope not. I don't think so. Don't try to fall on purpose and find it out, bro.
I know, I'm not trying to, bro.
There you go. Oh yeah.
Dog, they don't know, bro.
They don't know. Alright, go check around this thing, bro. Where the fuck is fucking Patrick hiding, bro?
Dog, that ketamine really fucked him up, bro.
Oh, just find this rock, bro.
Oh, he could be. Nah, he's not here.
Bro.
What's happening?
Bodies over here, bro. Who's hiding the cat?
Dog, I'm a fucking lunatic, bro.
I'm a fucking superstar.
Look at this action camera, bro.
Patrick be like, I'm a fucking superstar.
Yeah, we gotta go to the chiropractic, dog.
I guess so. Can you knock on Squidward's house, bro? No. Oh.
Jab.
Look at those hands.
Jab.
Look at those big meaty claws.
Hook. This game is so sick, bro. Yeah. There he is with that.
Squidward. Click. No. Press E. No, you can't just go in there, bro. Why not? Why are you gatekeeping my restaurant, Squidward? Mr. Squidward? Punch the window, bro. Just fucking punch the window, bro.
One sec, dog.
Oh.
I'm trying to climb in from the fucking roof, bro.
Bro, this is plankton and shit.
Window.
Just press that. Oh.
One sec.
Oh, okay, I think you gotta find Patrick first.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Is he behind this rock, bro? Is this where he gets his customers, bro? Dog, where the fuck is Patrick? I think you might gotta go back to the city, bro.
Yeah, I might, bro.
Or maybe Squidward's house, bro.
Holy, bro.
Bro, whoever made this game, bro.
Yeah, that guy's a legend in my books, bro. My God. Wait, let me talk to him again. Can I talk to him?
Guess not, bro. Yo, where the fuck is Patrick at? Did we check this spot right here?
Oh yeah, remember we took out those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Bro, I fucking caused mayhem in fucking Bikini Bottom, bro.
Yo, this guy is a witness, bro? That guy's a witness, bro?
This guy's talking about Bikini Bottom, bro. Everybody dead, bro.
Okay, maybe you gotta go back to the motel, bro. Oh, what about this big ass rock formation right here, bro?
Huh?
See that big ass rock to the right?
That's definitely where he is.
Either that, it's like the small one to the left, bro. All they gotta do, bro, now all they gotta make is a fucking strip club Joe Budden game, bro.
Bro, I need that, bro. It was like Batman Arkham Mechanics, bro.
wants to be around here, bro. Shady motherfucker like Patrick, bro. No way. No way. No way. Yo, Mr. Krabs got thick, though.
Dog, you got that dumpy, bro.
Yeah, you got
He
that.
thicker than Mrs. Puff. Oh, I see him. Oh, that's not him. Wait, bro, where's Patrick, bro?
Patgar?
Quee?
One Quee?
Is it Patar Fee? Who the fuck is the guy, bro?
Nah, for real, bro. What the fuck is it?
It's my room, right? All over here?
I think so. You live here, bro? Or you just spawned here, bro? Nah, where the fuck is Patrick at, bro?
I can't even find him.
Behind these rocks. He must be here, bro. I swear to God. I swear to God. I swear. Don't tell us we gotta watch a fucking tutorial for this game, bro.
We might have to, bro.
Not even the fucking other one, bro. Oh,
Okay.
right there.
Oh, there he
He's even
is.
behind a rock, bro.
Fucking needle, bro.
We're fucking stupid, bro.
Dog.
Dog, that guy is unwell. That guy is unwell, bro.
Whoa, Mr. Krabs, you're still doing ketamine? What the fuck? You need to get on that new shit. Take a man's life.
We got new shit to pick up, bro.
So he's high on the fact that he got to kill, taking a man's
Yeah,
life?
take a man's life, bro.
Oh, that's easy.
Surely you've taken more men's lives than you've taken ketamine, bro.
This guy, you know what?
This guy don't know who he's talking to, bro.
Facts, bro.
This guy don't know everybody else in the city's dead, bro. Don't jump down the fucking pit, bro. Okay, you're a gamer, bro. There's one.
This guy's one hit kill, bro. Holy. Yeah, come here. Come here, fool. All happy and shit. Get the fuck out of my face, bro. This is my fucking city, bro. Who
It's
told?
funny because they probably have to respawn 4 people for this challenge, bro.
I know.
Because he killed everybody else.
I actually slaughtered everyone, bro. I killed everyone in Bikini Bottom, bro. Like, how many dead bodies there are, bro? Oh my god, I slaughtered everyone, bro.
Only SpongeBob and Patrick and Squidward are alive, bro.
I get why Squidward's hiding, bro. He's like, yo, fuck this shit, bro. He's like, I don't want to get.
He's about to give you some fucking nice quest, bro.
Squidward looks fine, bro.
It's gonna be like, yo, kill SpongeBob.
Yo, I'd be down, though.
SpongeBob?
Who gave these guys ketamine, bro? That's my thing.
Bro, some fucking boat probably sank, bro. Ketamine ship.
Yo, this guy's a fucking lunatic.
Now that you're an epic gamer, go suck off Squidward.
Say less, bro. Say less.
I'm gonna do what to
Say
Squidward?
less, bro.
I mean, since you asked.
Testicles.
Squidward testicle. There's another guy? Oh, no. Not in my city, bro.
Where do you see another guy, bro? There's a statue?
Nah.
Bro's gonna beat the statue, bro.
There he
Oh,
is.
this guy, the cop, bro? Get this guy, dude.
Little bitch. Don't fucking come in my city again, bro.
They don't know. Squidward?
That's Squidward. Why I kill like 4 people and then I gotta suck Squidward off?
It's that ketamine. Oh, you're inside now.
I got 6?
Yeah. No, you got 5 from Patrick.
Oh.
What's that saying, bro?
He just tended it off the perk, bro. Like, I'm pretty sure these spots are like where you gotta stand to.
That's teleport, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how the fuck do you, oh, right, stand right in front of him. Click? No? No? Use some ketamine? Use climb on his head, bro. Yeah, use some ketamine, bro.
Alright, bro.
Maybe go talk to SpongeBob first? I don't know.
Man, just pull your piece out, dog. You ain't wearing pants.
So it's already out. Go talk to SpongeBob.
Back.
Maybe he's gonna want to suck off Squidward with you, bro.
I like the way you think, bro. This game is amazing, dog.
Honestly, bro, this might be better than like
The other one?
No, I was gonna say better than fucking Elden Ring, bro.
Ah, you're right, bro. You got it, bro.
This guy's actually, take some more ketamine, bro. Fuck it.
Nah, actually, maybe. I want to preserve it, bro.
Yo, what if they want you to suck off Squidward at full health, though, bro? You know? What if you press 2?
Yo.
Like Hawk 2, bro. They don't let you suck it, bro. They don't let you suck it, bro. Mr. Squidward. Alright, just take some ketamine, bro. At the end of the day, bro, just take some ketamine, bro.
Yo, I'm fucking on it, bro. Mr. Squidward.
You saw that? You saw that? You saw that?
Dog, hold on.
Hold on, Mr. Squidward. Where the fuck are you, bro? What the hell?
Into the roof, dog.
Yo, why can't we suck him off, bro?
Come on, Squidward.
They don't let you click on him, nothing, bro? Right click?
Hey, bro,
Right click. Up, down. Enter.
What the fuck?
What the fuck am I looking at, bro? What did you do? What did you do?
Press something, I guess.
What am I looking at? Is there a slow motion button you just pressed, bro? How did you make this game slow motion, bro? What button could have possibly done that? Oh, I think you fixed it. What button was it?
I don't think I... Oh, I think I inversed it too.
What do you mean? You changed the controls?
I did something, bro.
Oh, what? What the fuck did you do, bro? Did you lock the camera, bro? Bro's like putting in some fucking GTA codes and shit, bro. What am I looking at?
It's POV?
This is his dick's POV, bro.
It's V.
Okay, V for view. Yeah. Okay.
It's not even... This is cock, bro. What the fuck? Oh, those people I killed.
What the fuck? You did that, bro. I doesn't even remember fucking committing atrocities and shit. Nah, genuinely, what did you do, bro?
Okay, wait.
Yo, I think you should take some ketamine, bro.
No, chill. Bro, what did I do?
What did you type?
Man, I'm just trying to just trying to get him to suck off Squidward, bro.
Yeah, go in there and suck him off, bro. Or watch a fucking playthrough of someone else sucking him off, bro.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Okay. X,
Yeah.
Z.
Okay.
Okay, this speeds him up. A, S, K,
Talking about
F, E. What's the button that fixes the camera, bro?
it's not C?
No.
No?
It's generally V.
Alright, well, I guess you're like this now. Suck him off.
Dog, please, bro.
Suck him off. Oh, I thought you fixed it for a second. Alright, just take all your ketamine, bro.
One sec, bro.
I think you deserve it.
One sec. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no. One sec. Bro, one of these got to be the right one, bro.
Where the fuck are you looking now, bro? What are you doing?
Bro, what'd I do?
What did you do, bro? No, genuinely, bro.
Oh, fuck. Dog, what did I do?
I don't know, bro. I don't know.
Yo, you want to start over and you try, bro?
Bro, start over. Are you tweaking just to suck him off, bro? Surely.
Like, why is that even a function, bro?
Bro, what the fuck is happening, bro? How do you
What the fuck do we do,
how
bro?
do you go back to normal speed?
Oh, yeah, that's X.
You sure about that one?
Or C. Or V. No, V is that.
Oh, it's Z. It's Z.
Nah, bro, I'm telling you, you gotta.
I gotta what, bro? What do I gotta do, bro?
You gotta restart, bro. The way the game was before, the way that camera shit looked. Yo, press escape.
No, I think it's gonna end the game, bro.
Fuck.
Fuck, we gotta watch a video now, bro.
No.
What was this game called?
Mr. Krabs gets high on ketamine and dies.
Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs gets. I just type in fuck this ketamine, bro. That's probably good enough.
Okay, tell me play this.
Speedrun, bro. Oh, speedrun.net, bro. Maybe he's on it, bro. What the fuck?
Holy fuck! Holy fuck! Holy fuck!
Wait, hold on. This game is sick.
You wanna try that?
Yeah, we gotta try that. Not that though.
So today we're gonna be speedrunning through an...
It's all speedruns, bro. I wanna see the speedrun, bro.
On the full game.
Hey guys, welcome back to...
You can drive the car? Holy
I
shit.
know you can drive the car, bro. How did we miss that? Wait, what?
Oh, the uppercut. Oh, Mr. Krabs is not having it today. He's cracked. Out of his mind. Oh, there's another ketamine. Hopefully I can get it while on the boat. I cannot get it while
We're
on
just
the boat.
fucking walking, bro.
Alright, there we go. 2 more ketamine doses somewhere here for SpongeBob, me boy.
Are we retarded?
Boy Sponge,
We
me
might be,
boy.
bro.
Excuse me, ma'am. Please. Oh! Jesus Christ. Okay, we're fine. Simple physics.
Yeah,
Okay, look.
Also, I think the Krusty Krab is actually facing front door, faces towards their house, but I could be wrong. Let's see if Squidward... Yeah, see, Squidward's at work and SpongeBob's not. I find that pretty unlikely.
Hey, Mr. Krabs, I need you to sell these
Now, why did that
drugs
work
to
for us?
Sandy.
Oh, okay.
She's in town. Make sure you get my money.
Sandy looks normal.
Oh, wait, where's your helmet, dog?
Make sure you get my money. Alright, I got you, Squid. Wish I had a fucking boat, dude.
Okay. So I think we needed to restart the game because something was wrong. There was a bug. So now I say you hop in the driver's seat and you give it a
You
shot.
want me to fucking speedrun that shit, bro?
Give it a shot, bro. We know what to do, bro. We know what Patrick is. We spent like half our time fucking looking for Patrick, bro.
That's facts, bro. Alright. It's about to be the quickest lock-in of all time, bro. They're not ready. They're not ready for what they're about to see, bro.
They don't know.
They don't know. Alright, fuck it. Let me drive the boat. How do you drive the boat? What did I press? E? Ketamine me. Hi. Yo, wait.
What happened? Wait, what the fuck?
Who the fuck driving the whip, bro?
We in this bitch now. Let's go. Do you remember where all the ketamine was, bro?
No.
Oh. Okay. What down here? Give me that ketamine. Give me the ketamine.
I told you, dog. This game is crazy.
Can I hit him with the car?
Yeah. Yo, you know where all those guys are? Those fucking Planktons dudes?
In the pit?
Yeah, just hit him with the cart. If you can catch it, bro. Yeah, let's pull up on him, squabble, just hit all of them,
Let me
bro.
get these guys first, bro.
Where's your health?
What the fuck kind of drift was that? Holy. Man, my tires ain't even spinning, bro. Whoa, turn, swerve, bend that corner. Whoa. Bruh. Oh, they're running away?
Oh, they're all lined up. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I hit the fucking ketamine. Hold on, let me get the ketamine out the way.
No! Bro, you're actually slaughtering
I
them.
didn't have enough velocity, bro. Come back.
Wait, wait a minute,
bro. Wait, what? I can't turn. Oh shit.
You press the slow-mo button. No, you didn't.
I can't walk this way. Oh, bro, I fucking went, bro.
I mean, is this a speed run? Wait, did we just get to the boss?
Wait. But I can't. Oh, I gotta keep going this way? No, I'm stuck.
Go the other way. Jump. There you go.
But I can't go this way. Like, it won't let me walk
Okay,
this
just
way.
go on your right. And turn left here.
I can't.
Okay, then just keep going.
I can't. Oh, fuck. I think I gotta restart this game again, bro.
No!
Beep, beep.
Might be the greatest game of all time, bro.
Alright, fuck.
Okay.
That was definitely one of the speedruns of all time, bro.
Gets high on ketamine, bro.
Okay, so technically I think I should just go to SpongeBob first, right?
I think so.
Let me just get this first. Oh, don't run away from me. Get in. The fucking
fuck?
crazy glitch, bro.
I know, man.
Look at the fucking... Whoa.
The fuck?
Please, Mr. Krabs, I need
I'm locked
you to
back
get
in.
my ketamine. It's in the town over there. Please, Mr. Krabs, I'm fiending.
Fiend.
Solid ketamine run.
Solid ketamine run.
Okay, left. Ooh!
Oh, I got hit. Damn.
Okay, lock in. Yeah. Left.
We got the one in the pit real quick. Hold on. Yo, how's there a car down here, bro? What the hell?
Hey, man, it's Bikini Bottom, dog. Anything can happen.
Me. Alright. Let me drive the boat. Alright, you can live, bro. I'm sorry. This shorty, though?
Whoa.
On my swerve in that corner. Whoa.
Yo, good parking, bro.
Holy fuck, thank you so much, Mr. Krabs. Oh, you're a lifesaver. If you want to go get more good stuff, go see
Why is that moving
Patrick.
like that, bro?
It's on the other end of town.
Straight.
Alright, let's go kill 4 people for Patrick. Yo, let me make this jump. You think I make this jump, bro? Is this even where the jump is? Oh, there's a car blocking my path, bro.
What the fuck?
It's fucking dead. 360 with that car on him, bro. Swerve, and that car. Fuck. On my swerve. Alright, fuck.
Do a reverse for everyone.
Oh, bro, this fucking boat's in my way. It keeps turning me. I don't got the speed.
Oh man.
Alright, bro. I'll just do it the normal way. Run my ass over there. Patrick.
Whoa, Mr. Krabs, you're still doing ketamine? What the fuck? You need to get on that new shit. Take a man's life.
We've been doing that though.
Men, women, children.
If you in Bikini Bottom, you're dead, bro.
If you're not in my circle, you square, bro. What the fuck?
Talking, bro.
Oh, it doesn't even count? These other guys don't count, bro?
Nah, that's just for the love of the game, bro.
Bro, give me a hit list. I thought you just wanted me to take man alive, bro.
Oh, you got 2 in 1.
Oh, all these guys look the same, bro.
Whoa, parkour. Oh,
Oh, bro, I was climbing on nothing, bro. What the fuck?
you gotta commit to it, yeah.
Bitch ass motherfuckers. Where you going? Where you running? Where you running?
Just happy camper, bro.
Bop.
Yo, Mr. Krabs versus Conquest. Who you got, bro?
Is money on the line?
If money is on the line.
Mr. Krabs got it, bro. Mr. Krabs got it for sure, bro.
Go suck off Squidward.
Finally, bro.
Finally.
They better let me suck him off this time, I swear to God.
Have you done ketamine yet?
No? You want me to do some ketamine?
Do it.
What if I make that jump off ketamine? Whoa! average day in the ketamine pit. I'm ready.
As long as ketamine hit, bro. The fuck?
How the fuck did I end up back here?
God, ketamine. Hey man, sometimes
Hope this game's not bugged, bro.
Hey, Mr. Krabs, I need you to sell these drugs to Sandy. She's in town. Make sure you get my money.
use the ketamine, bro.
Alright, where's this bitch?
There she is. Yeah, try sliding next to her. Yeah. I'm gonna just go get out by this delivery list so we can Guess it doesn't matter. Oh, that's it? You just gotta go kill him?
What the fuck did that bitch even say to me, bro? Irrelevant.
So now just we get the money and then we just gotta go kill Plankton. Oh, left, 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 left. Go back, go back, go back. Left, right. Oh, yeah, right. There you go. Just kidding. I sound like a gun, bro.
Good look, bro. I guess there's still ketamine in the pit, and there's the one in front of that door too.
Do we do a quick ketamine run? Nah, there's gonna be ketamine inside. Fuck it.
Hi, boys.
Take it. Oh, well, that works.
Are we in there? Whoa, whoa. I can't see shit. Oh. Oh. Is that his cock? What is that? Oh, it's his pimp hand, bro. How did he hit me? What's his range, bro? Oh, man. It's okay, bro. Let me take a ketamine real quick. Whoa. Got the key. Oh, what is this camera? What is this camera, bro?
Right click?
Right click.
Right click, it moves like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay, got the key.
Yeah, there you go. Oh fuck.
We're finally here. Now, play me in a coin
ketamine.
toss to decide my fate.
Play coin toss.
Oh my god, my only weakness, literally fucking dying.
I'm out here now. That's it.
Go see Sandy?
You said take ketamine?
Go see Sandy, but yeah, take ketamine. Trying to crash through the one. Okay, go see Scorer?
Make sure it wasn't just a ketamine thing, bro. Yo, is there another car here that I can take that's not in the fucking pit, bro?
Yo, these guys are still after you?
I got the helmets, bro.
You know?
Bro, you want me to OD, bro? What the fuck?
Kinda, yeah.
Are you serious right now?
See this, bro. Okay, I dare you to walk out and then just spam all the ketamine. Oh fuck! What the fuck? Holy fuck.
Average ketamine bender.
Look at the ass by the ketamine.
Oh. Oh, fuck.
That
So-
one looks like a 7, bro.
Yeah. Imagine 7 ketamine, bro. Oh, man.
Oh my god, bro. We could've, bro.
Crazy, bro. Imagine if I fell right there, bro.
That would suck,
That
bro.
would have been tough, bro. Alright, where should we go from here, bro? No? Okay. You don't have hops like I thought he had hops. They didn't put our crib in this bitch, bro? Mr. Krabs' house, bro?
Nah. We got the motel, bro. I wonder where Pearl up to. No.
Nah, is that the end of the game, though? Like, what do we do now?
I just want to poke the game up.
Let me talk to Patrick, bro. Maybe Patrick got...
Maybe Patrick got
Hey,
the
Patrick
answer.
know what they're gonna do, bro. Patrick, what do we do now, bro?
Also, the chum bucket's supposed to be across from actual coin toss, where it either crashes your game or you win. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, it's a good thing it didn't
Oh
crash
my
the game.
god!
Oh,
God, my
first
only
tee.
weakness, literally fucking dying.
My only weakness, literally fuck my speedrun route. But besides that, I think we beat the game. You can see my perfect strategy for speedrunning. Then you'll know the route if you want to try yourself. This has been Mr. Krabs Overdoses.
Yeah, it definitely has been that, bro. The fuck? Go behind the town, go by the rocks, you start hearing keyboard sound, then look behind the rock. What does that even mean, bro? Where could that even be, bro? Like this rock?
I think so.
Okay. There's about to be some bullshit, bro. That's cool. Yo, how long ago was that, bro? It's quite the gap. But this gap was so long we actually started playing a different game. Like 1 minute. Oh, bad, bro. Yeah, no, that's a different game than when you asked what game it was, by the way.
Yeah, I think we beat the game, bro.
Keyboard noises, bro? What the fuck that even mean, bro? Alright, well, I guess we beat the game.
Fucking fire, bro. It's 2 SpongeBob games in 1.